Over 2,000 years ago in ancient Rome, a form of slavery was prevalent, where ordinary people were sent to work in mines, deprived of daylight. Neither the elderly nor children were exempted, and women of beauty became tools of indulgence for the Romans. Strong and healthy men were sent to gladiator schools, where, after training and selection, they became gladiators, providing the Romans with life and death spectacles. Quintus, a Roman noble, inherited a gladiator training school passed down from his ancestors. His family had produced many champion gladiators, many of whom he remembered.
Dola, Acabitus, Janus.
Now, with no standing in the arena, he watched his rivals and the elites from the lower seats, determined to make a strong effort. Starting with a duelist in his hand, Gannicus, a sunny, spring-like young man with a charming smile and graceful posture, drove countless women mad. Even in life and death battles, his cheerful smile remained on his face. This composure made other duelists want to beat him immediately, but his combat record was outstanding. Fighting desperately instead gave him a chance to show off his skills. Only vulnerable to sneak attacks while greeting women. This thrilling moment terrified Quintus, but when Gannicus saw his spotlight stolen, he finally dropped his smile, and the consequences were severe. He walked up with his fists raised. Quintus worried for nothing, as he hadn't expected to turn defeat into victory. Gannicus felt it wasn't enough. After the opponent got up, he retrieved his long sword. Taking advantage of the attack, he flipped over, retrieved his left sword for blocking, and then thrust his right sword directly. This series of fluid skills amazed everyone. Seeing his opponent powerless, he resumed his smile and placed both swords on the opponent's neck. Quintus glanced at the main stand, only to see the detestable Batiatus. As the magistrate had not yet arrived, he quickly told Gannicus to hold off, but Gannicus didn't care who was there or not. The next second, the magistrate and Tullius arrived, perfectly missing the moment of Gannicus's final move. This left Quintus frustrated and he had no choice but to leave the arena. At that time, Salonius was still his friend, and they talked about the under-construction Grand Arena on the way back. Quintus wanted to participate in the opening competition of the arena but had to find a way to secure a spot first. Then someone called out Lucretia's name, and she turned to see her best friend Gaia. Gaia, the strongest social butterfly of Rome, left many longing for more. The two quickly went shopping hand in hand, while Quintus and Salonius began to wander around the city. Suddenly, a slave involved in a street fight caught Quintus's attention. This slave's owner was Tullius, the builder of the arena. Quintus had a great idea and immediately bought Crixus for 5 times the price. He also gave Tullius's assistant a generous tip, hoping he would inform Tullius, and then happily went home to wait for news. However, he received no reply from Tullius until late at night. So, the next day he took the initiative to find Tullius, only to discover Batiatus was also there. Batiatus guessed that he wanted to ingratiate himself with Tullius, so he mocked his naive thoughts and the decline of his family. He countered by saying that any of his gladiators could defeat Batiatus's gladiators blindfolded. Immediately, the atmosphere became tense, and they decided to duel at the market the next morning. Quintus returned home, delighted. Having intentionally provoked Batiatus into anger to showcase Gannicus's prowess, he hoped to see Batiatus's men beaten and earn Tullius's esteem, unaware that Batiatus had laid a trap for him. Meanwhile, Gannicus had just woken up from a battle the previous day, after fighting 2 opponents for hours, ending in mutual damage. He needed time to recover, unaware of the looming crisis. In the training ground, newcomers were handling wooden posts, and veterans were honing their skills, except for Gannicus, who was still engaged in combat, highlighting the constant need for vigilance. As night fell and the gladiators completed their training, Gannicus finally finished his private competition. Melita, returning home with the girls, seized the moment to speak with her husband Enemos. The 2 girls ahead were talking about Gannicus with Naevia and Diana until Melita interrupted. She advised Naevia to resist her naive desires, a kindness that Naevia appreciated, followed by Melita's poignant words.
And in regards to Gannicus, I've seen bigger.
After a day of shopping, the sisters returned to the mansion to rest. Gaia, widowed by her Roman husband, sought temporary residence with Lucretia until finding a suitable match. Lucretia, desiring her friend's company, agreed to persuade her husband. When Melita brought wine, Lucretia inquired if Gannicus had been properly attended to, piquing Gaia's interest, who had heard of the charming Gannicus. Gaia's excitement had no outlet, but after Lucretia persuaded her husband to let Gaia stay, Quintus, adoring his wife, agreed. The couple then became affectionate, and from afar, Gaia witnessed this, igniting her inner cosmos. The next day, back at the arena, Quintus enjoyed the atmosphere, proud of his unbeatable warrior who attracted as much envy from men as he did admiration from women. Another fight was arranged by the master.
Conqueror of giants, slayer of beasts, old Gannicus, champion of the house of Batiatus.
With Gannicus ready to thrash a despised opponent, just as the magistrate was about to start the fight.
Apologies, magistrate. There appears to be something missing. Where is your man's blindfold?
Blindfold?
That your gladiator could best any of my men, absent sight.
Figure of speech not meant to be...
The artist does not wish to honor terms. He should remove himself, with tail between legs.
Vedius interrupted. Quintus's claim to defeat his rival even blindfolded had led Vedius to demand Gannicus fight blindfolded, a reality Quintus hadn't anticipated. With Tullius confirming the claim, Quintus sought to argue but faced Vedius's determination to see him embarrassed, so he turned to Gannicus, understanding the danger of blindfolded combat. Gannicus had no choice but to trust in creating a miracle. After handing his swords to the coach and donning a blindfold, he retrieved his swords and assumed a combat stance. Facing Otho, a fighter who began by striking his shield to reveal his position, he charged forward with a roar, giving Gannicus auditory cues to counterattack and successfully disarm Otho of his short sword. Hoping to seize victory, Gannicus was instead lifted high and slammed down hard, forcing out the alcohol he had consumed the night before. Gannicus barely managed to get Otho off him but was quickly knocked down again, followed by a series of kicks and punches. Quintus hoped for another miracle, but it seemed unlikely. Otho, confident of victory, slowly picked up his long sword, leaving Gannicus unaware until he was wounded across the chest. After pinpointing Otho's position, Gannicus quickly counterattacked. The situation swiftly reversed. Gannicus pinned Otho down, pummeling him, but Otho, with his superior strength, pushed Gannicus against the wall and landed 2 punches to his head. Otho then pinned him down, choking him, and reached for an iron nail, driving it down as Gannicus's block came too late. Gannicus threw Otho off and resumed his fighting stance, as Otho charged at him with a roar. Otho died in battle, leaving Vedius as uncomfortable as if he had swallowed a fly, and Tullius did not anticipate such a loss. The crowd surrounded Gannicus, boosting his popularity after the fight. The magistrate praised Quintus for training a formidable ally, and Tullius expressed interest in collaborating, delighting Quintus as his path to a comeback began. In the evening, discussing the partnership with Tullius, he promised Quintus a spot in the arena's opening competition if he sold Gannicus. Quintus realized Vedius's training ground was also Tullius's property, but Gannicus symbolized his rise. Believing Gannicus would become the arena champion, Quintus declined Tullius's offer. Tullius, a powerful figure in Capua, resorted to violence when persuasion failed. Quintus was beaten in the streets and doused with urine by Tullius, who issued a stern warning not to step foot in the arena again. Meanwhile, his wife and Gaia were blissfully unaware, waiting for good news. Quintus, looking at the under-construction arena, wondered if his dream was over. A week later, he could barely walk, and Diana suggested reporting to the magistrate. Knowing the magistrate was Tullius's puppet, Quintus decided against it. Salonius visited with a bottle of fruit wine, which Quintus smashed in rage upon learning it was from Tullius. Salonius shared his dilemma, revealing he would face oppression from Tullius if he didn't deliver the message. Understanding his predicament, Quintus realized the gravity of the situation and knew he had to find a solution.